Hey everybody, it's Denise from God's Third Acre. It's been a while since I've seen you. I've been busy doing some other things, and that commitment has come to an end, sadly, but I had to make some changes for my health's sake. So I'm back to being at home and hopefully can get out a few videos to you more frequently than I have been. Today I'm going to make what my grandma called eggless, milkless, butterless cake. And some of you may know it as depression cake, but my grandma always called it by the other name. And she raised children through the Depression, so I'm sure that it's the depression cake that you've all heard about. So we actually start out here on the stove. To my saucepan here, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the heat. To my saucepan, I'm going to add 3/4 a cup of Crisco. It calls for lard. I don't have lard, but I do have Crisco. So I use my Pampered Chef Wonder Cup measure cup. I love this for things like peanut butter and shortening because it just scrapes the sides down and gets it all out very, very well. So it calls for 3/4 cup of lard or Crisco, 1 cup of water, 1 cup of sugar, and 1 cup of raisins. I'm just going to stir that around a little bit and kind of try to break up my raisin clumps a little bit. They'll break up as it heats up. Then there are 2 spices I'm going to add to this. This calls for 1 teaspoon of ground cloves and 1 teaspoon of nutmeg. And I just grated the nutmeg. It smells delicious. So I'm going to go ahead and add a teaspoon of each of those to the water. And stir that in a little bit. And this has to heat up and come to a boil. It will boil for 3 minutes. So while this is coming up to heat and getting to a boil, I will wait and I'll come back when it's finished. Before that though, I did want to show you my nutmeg. I've had this for a long time. Marion K spices, and this is whole nutmeg. I hope you can see that okay. So let me show you what it looks like. I've used up quite a bit of them, but the whole nutmeg looks like this. And as you can see, I've used these quite a bit and grated them up, but they smell so good. This is old. It's probably not as strong as fresh nutmeg, but I really like using it. And to use it, you just use a little grater like this and rub it along here until you get the amount of nutmeg you want. But I didn't know if any of you had ever seen whole nutmeg before, so I thought that might be interesting. Okay, my friends, I'm back. And my mixture has cooled down. You can see the raisins and the water and oil, and I'm splashing it on myself. I'm a messy cook. So the next thing we want to do, now that it's cooled down to about room temperature, we're going to add 2 cups of flour and half a teaspoon of baking powder. Now I want to show you, I use this Rumford's baking powder that's aluminum free. I've heard you hear so many bad things about aluminum in our diets and how it's linked to Alzheimer's. So trying to remove as much aluminum as possible from my diet. So I have the aluminum free, and it's also low sodium, the one I got. So it's supposed to be half a teaspoon of baking powder, and I mix that in with my 2 cups of flour. So I'm going to mix that in. I'm using 1 pot cooking here, so I'm going to start mixing in the flour. And I'm not going to use a beater or anything like that. I'm just going to stir it in with my scraper here. I can remember my grandma making this cake, and it was always so good. It's kind of a spicy, almost like a coffee cake, I guess it could be. It doesn't have streusel or anything like that, but it's very tasty. Now I have to admit, I made a mistake. When I was measuring out my baking powder, I accidentally measured a teaspoon instead of a half a teaspoon. So this may puff up much more than it usually does, but that's okay. So I've got my flour mixed in. It's incorporated really well. And the last thing is adding a teaspoon of baking soda. So between the extra baking powder I added and this baking soda, I think it's going to puff up pretty good. So I'm going to try to distribute this around in here and not just dump it in a clump. I don't know why it has you add the things separately, but that's what my grandma's instructions said, so that's what we're doing. Alright, so we got that mixed together. Now I'm going to get my pan ready. I was going to use a 9x13 pan, but I think I might switch over to my 9x9 baking dish, because otherwise this is going to be pretty thin. It's not a huge batch. So I have my great Pampered Chef. Yes, I used to sell Pampered Chef, so I have a lot of Pampered Chef items. But this is I think it's an 8-inch square baker, so I'm going to use this. And I'm going to use my favorite Baker's Joy. This has the flour incorporated with the spray oil, so it coats it with the flour and oil all at once. Now I had to hide this because I had a feeling that Russell was using this in his egg pan in the morning to cook eggs with. I don't know if he was or not, but I kept seeing this in a different place. So I have a feeling he was using this thinking that it was just plain old cooking spray. So Russell may have had some floury eggs. But we'll go ahead and take that off and spray. You can see it's got the flour and the oil. And something else in the bottom here. Looked like maybe a dog hair. I know that never happens at anybody else's house except mine. But we got that out of there. Alright, so I'm going to put my cake mix in here. Scrape this out and get this spread out in my pan. It's already kind of puffing up, so I'm anxious to see how this is going to turn out. Alright, I've got that in the pan. I'm going to put it in the oven, and we bake it at 350 for 30 minutes. And I'll come back and show you what it looks like when it's done. Well, the cake is done. And I cut it up. It turned out a little fluffier, which I kind of figured it would because I put too much baking powder in it. But it still tastes really good. Russell had a piece of it and he said it's delicious. So there's a piece waiting for me. So I'm anxious to have a bite. But I hope you enjoyed seeing this video of an old recipe. I'll kind of get a close-up there. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you all are having a blessed day. And I'll see you next time on God's Third Acre.